CapCut video editing tutorial in depth. CapCut has become one of the most popular editing tools for creators worldwide, not just because it's free, but because it packs a professional punch inside a simple interface. But behind that simplicity lies a full-fledged editing powerhouse. Transitions, keyframes, overlays, effects, audio editing, masking, motion tracking, and more. In this in-depth tutorial, we're going beyond just trimming clips and adding text. We're unlocking advanced features most creators overlook and showing you how to use them to build dynamic, engaging, and cinematic content from scratch. Whether you're editing for YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, or even short films, this is your all-in-one guide to mastering CapCut. From beginner basics to advanced techniques, you'll learn how to control pacing, blend sounds, layer visuals, add cinematic effects, and polish every frame until it feels just right. So if you're ready to elevate your edits and truly harness CapCut's full creative potential, this is where your journey begins. Before we dive into editing, let's start by getting familiar with the layout of CapCut. Understanding where everything is located will make the editing process much smoother, especially if you're brand new to this tool. So once you open CapCut on your computer, the first thing we're going to do is create a new project. To do that, simply head up to the top of the screen and click on the New Project button. This will open up the main editing interface where you'll be doing all your work. Now, let me walk you through the main layout. CapCut's interface is divided into several sections or windows, and each of these plays a specific role in your editing workflow. Some of these windows have multiple tabs, each with tools that we'll explore as we go. But for now, let's focus on the first and most essential area, the Media tab. This Media tab is located on the left-hand side, and it's where you'll import all of the footage, images, or audio you want to use in your video. To add media files, click on the plus button or use the keyboard shortcut Command or Control+I. This will open your file explorer, allowing you to browse and select the video clips stored on your computer. Once you've selected your footage, it will appear in the media pool, which acts as your central library inside the project. From here, you can click on any of the media files to preview them. This helps you get a quick sense of the clip's content before dragging it into your actual project. Next, let's move to the timeline, which is one of the most important parts of CapCut, located at the bottom of the screen. The timeline is where your entire video comes together. It's where you'll arrange, trim, and edit your clips to form a complete story. To begin working on your video, simply drag the desired clip from the media pool down into the timeline area. Once it's placed, you'll see the clip stretch across the timeline from left to right. This layout represents the flow of your video from beginning to end. To fine-tune your editing, you might want to zoom in or out of your timeline. This helps you make more precise adjustments. There are a few ways to do this. You can drag the zoom slider located just above the timeline, or use keyboard shortcuts. Command+ to zoom in and Command- to zoom out. My personal favorite method? I hold down the Command key and then scroll up or down using the scroll wheel on my mouse or trackpad. It's fast and super efficient when you're making quick edits. Now, say you want to trim the beginning or end of a clip. This is very easy in CapCut. Simply hover over the start or end of your clip in the timeline until you see the trim icon. Then click and drag inward to cut off the parts you don't need. If you want to cut a specific section out of the middle of a clip, you can use the Split tool, which is located just above the timeline. Click it or use the shortcut Command+B to make a cut exactly where your playhead is positioned. This will split your video into two separate segments, allowing you to delete or edit each piece individually. So that's a good starting point. We've covered how to navigate the layout, import media, place clips on the timeline, and do some basic trimming and cutting. In the next section, we'll move forward and work on a Level 1 edit, perfect for beginners who want to create clean and professional-looking videos in CapCut with ease. If you ever make a mistake or change something unintentionally during your edit, don't worry. You can simply press Command+Z on your keyboard to undo your last action. It's a handy shortcut that you'll likely use often as you experiment with different editing techniques. For now, this is really all you need to keep in mind as we continue working on the video. As we go further, you'll naturally start to discover and use more tools and features that CapCut offers. Now, let's talk about what happens when you select a clip that's placed in your timeline. When you click on a video clip down below, you'll notice that a new tab becomes visible in the top right corner of the interface. This is known as the Video tab, and it's one of the most important areas for making visual adjustments to your selected footage. Within this Video tab, you have access to a variety of editing controls. For example, you can adjust the scale of the video to zoom in or out on the subject, or even rotate the clip slightly if you want to give it a stylized look or correct uneven footage. These features become especially useful as your editing becomes more detailed and creative. But that's just the beginning. Alongside video settings, this panel also includes controls for audio levels. You can easily raise or lower the volume of the selected clip to balance your sound, or mute it entirely if needed. Then there's the Speed tab, where you can modify how fast or slow your clip plays. Whether you want to create a smooth slow motion effect or speed up a scene for a time-lapse feel, this is where you do it. Another very useful feature is found under the Animation tab. CapCut includes a set of built-in animations you can apply to your clips. These range from subtle fades to more dynamic movements, all of which can add energy and polish to your video. The interface here is fairly intuitive, and we'll explore it in more detail as we progress. Now, here's something important to understand. When you deselect a clip, that is, when you click anywhere in the timeline that doesn't contain a clip, the panel on the right-hand side changes automatically. Instead of showing the individual clip settings, it now displays the project panel, which contains overall settings for your entire video project. This panel allows you to manage things like the resolution, frame rate, and general file information. For most basic edits, you won't need to change much here. But just to keep things organized, I recommend renaming your project. To do that, click the Modify button, type in a new project name. I'll call this one Best Free Editing Software, and then hit Save. Next, let's turn our attention to the player window, located right in the center at the top of the screen. This is your video playback area. It shows you exactly what your project currently looks like as you work on it. There isn't a ton of technical detail to cover here, but there is one setting that's worth mentioning. If you notice that your video playback is lagging or choppy, especially on slower computers, you can improve performance by switching the preview setting to Performance Priority. This temporarily lowers the playback resolution to make editing smoother, without affecting the final export quality of your video. Also, if you're editing videos for different platforms, you'll likely need to change the aspect ratio depending on where your video will be published. For example, you might want to switch to a 16:9 widescreen ratio if you're making a YouTube video, or go for 9:16 vertical if you're targeting TikTok or Instagram Reels. To do this, click the Ratio button at the bottom and select your preferred format. Now, when you change the aspect ratio, you might see black bars appear on either side of the video if it doesn't completely fill the frame. That's an easy fix. Just use the Scale control in the Video tab to zoom in slightly until your video covers the entire screen. For now, though, since we're working on vertical content, we'll keep our aspect ratio set to the original vertical format. And before we wrap up this section, I want to highlight something we touched on earlier, the top left corner of the screen. While we've already introduced the Media tab, which houses all the files you've imported into your project, there are several other tabs here that add even more functionality. You'll find an Audio tab that gives you access to music and sound effects, a Text tab for adding titles and captions, and additional tabs for stickers, effects, and transitions, all of which we'll explore as we move deeper into this tutorial. So at this point, you're getting more comfortable navigating CapCut's interface, and you've learned how to adjust both your clips and your overall project settings. Up next, we'll dive into applying your first round of edits, the kind of foundational work that transforms raw footage into polished, share-worthy content. Let's keep going. Text stickers, effects and transitions, and a lot of other things that we will use throughout this editing tutorial. Okay, so that does it for the basic overview of CapCut. I think it's a lot more valuable to see these things in use. So that's what we're going to dive into right now with the Level 1 edit. At this point, it's important to recognize that there are countless types of videos you might want to create inside CapCut. From cinematic travel montages to fast-paced TikToks, product reviews, vlogs, or even tutorials. But for now, we're going to keep things simple and focus on a very common and beginner-friendly format known as the talking head reel. This style mirrors the kind of video you'd typically see on platforms like YouTube, Instagram Reels, or even LinkedIn, where a single person is speaking directly to the camera, delivering information or commentary. It's clean, straightforward, and incredibly effective for creating personal, professional, or promotional content. In the case of the video we're editing right now, we're working with one main talking head clip. That means everything, the visuals, the audio, and the message, is contained within this single recording. It's simple to work with and a great way to learn the editing basics. Now, just to compare, let's say you were editing something more dynamic in, for example, a travel vlog. In that scenario, instead of one long clip, your media pool would likely be filled with multiple different shots. Landscapes, food, street scenes, B-roll, transitions, all of which would need to be placed onto your timeline. You'd follow a similar process. Drag each clip into the timeline, trim them down to just the moments you want to use, arrange them in the right order, and maybe add transitions to make everything feel smooth and polished. That's essentially how you'd build a full sequence. But for this tutorial, since we're working with a single clip, we can keep our focus narrow. Let's go ahead and jump into the first step of the editing process. Whenever I begin editing, I always start by ensuring the framing of the clip is spot on. That means making sure the subject is centered or positioned properly within the shot, especially if you're working with vertical formats where composition really matters. If I notice something's a little off, I might use the scale and position tools in the video tab to zoom in slightly or shift the subject left or right until the framing feels right. In this case, though, the video already looks good straight from the camera, so we're not going to make any adjustments to the frame. Next up, we want to make sure the audio sounds clean and professional. Audio is just as important as video, sometimes even more so, because if the sound is too low, too loud, or filled with distracting noise, people will click away from your video fast. Fortunately, CapCut gives us a few helpful tools in the Audio tab to handle this. If I needed to, I could simply adjust the volume slider to increase or decrease the overall loudness of the clip. There's also an option for loudness normalization, which automatically balances the volume throughout the video, keeping it consistent from beginning to end. Very useful if your voice level fluctuates. Additionally, there's a noise reduction toggle, which can filter out background sounds like fans, AC units, or traffic. It's not always perfect, but it can make a noticeable difference. In this case, though, I'm already happy with how the audio sounds, so I'll leave everything as is and move on. Now, let's talk about color correction. This isn't something you always need to do, but it can help your footage look more polished and visually appealing, especially if the lighting in your original video wasn't ideal. To access these settings, click on the Adjustment tab. From here, you can fine-tune things like color temperature to make your video warmer or cooler, saturation to make colors pop, contrast, and brightness. For example, if the image looks a bit dull, you could bump up the saturation slightly to give it more life. If the lighting feels too harsh, lowering the brightness just a bit can help smooth it out. Again, in my case, I think the clip looks fine as it is, but to demonstrate, I'll make a few quick changes. Then just hit Command+Z to undo them, bringing everything back to the original look. That's really the key here. When you shoot with good lighting and a stable camera, most of the time you won't need to do much color correction. It saves you time and helps you keep your edits efficient. So with the intro steps out of the way, proper framing, clear audio, and balanced visuals, we're ready to move into the next phase of the process, adding structure and storytelling to your edit. Let's keep building. All right, let's now dive into the actual editing process and start refining this footage to make it clean, engaging, and watchable. For context, I've been using Premiere Pro as my main editing software for the past 10 years. It's interesting seeing things laid out this way because it really shows how my workflow is designed for speed and clarity. Even though it might look a bit funny at first, this approach lets me produce content without needing to memorize every word, and that's a huge time saver. If we zoom into the timeline and focus on the audio waveforms, those squiggly lines you see running along the audio track, each of these represents the sound of my voice. And as you can probably tell, there are several sections that are just empty space, moments of silence while I'm pausing or thinking. These gaps don't add anything valuable to the video, so we need to trim them out to tighten things up. CapCut makes this process really simple and efficient by offering a few handy shortcuts. The first one we'll use is the split tool. To do this, I go up and click the split button on the toolbar. But instead of using the button every time, I prefer using the keyboard shortcut, Command+B on Mac, since it's much faster and keeps the workflow smooth. After splitting, I'll scroll forward. You can easily find it by watching for the spike in the audio waveform. Once I'm there, I'll use the next feature, Delete Left. What this tool does is it removes everything between the playhead and the last cut on the left side. So when I click it, you'll see that all that silent space is gone instantly, and now the end of one sentence flows directly into the beginning of the next. Again, for the sake of efficiency, I highly recommend learning and using keyboard shortcuts. So in this case, to speed things up even more, I'd move the playhead to the pause, hit Command+B, then jump to the next sound spike and press Q, which is the shortcut for delete left. When I hit Q, that gap gets deleted right away. This way, I can quickly go through the entire video and eliminate every unnecessary pause. It usually takes just a minute or two to clean everything up this way. Once I've reached the end of the timeline and removed all the dead space, I'll look at the final portion of the clip. Typically, you'll find a section of silence at the end before I manually end the recording. Of course, I could just trim that part using the edge of the clip, but CapCut gives us a faster tool for that too, Delete Right. It's basically the opposite of delete left, and the shortcut for this is W. So if I place the playhead at the point where the talking ends and press W, everything from there to the right gets deleted. I use this shortcut all the time because it keeps the edit clean and precise. At this point, our video is fully cut and trimmed down. Every unnecessary pause is gone, and the flow between each line feels much tighter. Next, I'll move on to a simple technique I apply to nearly all my social media and YouTube videos. Every time there's a jump cut from one clip to the next, I apply a small zoom-in effect to the second clip. This gives the illusion that the camera is subtly punching in, and it really helps keep the pacing of the video lively. To do this, I simply select the second clip after the cut, scale it in slightly, and reposition the frame to make sure my eyes line up consistently from clip to clip. This visual consistency is key, and the zoom gives the whole video a more dynamic feel. So now if I scroll through the playhead quickly, you'll notice it jumps in and out, creating a subtle but effective rhythm. It may feel odd at first when you start doing this, but trust me, it's a widely used technique among editors today. Surprisingly, we're almost done with this base edit. Believe it or not, there are just 3 more steps left before we're ready to move on to exporting and uploading this video online. Moving on to our next crucial step in the editing process, this is where we start adding B-roll to enhance the video. Think of B-roll as supplemental footage that's layered on top of your primary content, which we call A-roll. In our case, the A-roll is the main talking portion, the part of the video where I'm speaking directly to the camera. B-roll serves a very important purpose. It adds visual context to whatever is being said in the A-roll, helping to reinforce or illustrate key points. It also adds movement and variety to what the viewer is seeing, which keeps things from getting visually stale. Basically, it makes the video more dynamic and helps hold the viewer's attention. It also brings a polished, professional feel to your final cut. To prepare for this step, I'd already filmed several B-roll shots in advance. I organized all of them into a dedicated folder on my desktop, just to keep everything neat and accessible. So now I'll head over to the Media Pool section in CapCut. From here, I'm going to click on the Import button and click Import once again, which is exactly how I like to keep things structured. Having all related clips grouped together makes the editing process a lot smoother. I can now easily browse all of my B-roll content from one place. Now let's talk about how we actually add B-roll to the timeline. The process is pretty straightforward. First, I scroll through the folder and select the B-roll clip I want to use. Once I've found the right one, I simply drag and drop that clip onto a new layer above the A-roll on the timeline. Here's how the video editing timeline works. Clips that are on the higher layers take visual priority. So when the playhead reaches a section where B-roll is placed above the A-roll, the viewer will see the B-roll footage on screen. Once that B-roll ends, the playback will revert to showing whatever is on the layer beneath. In this case, our talking head footage. That basic drag and drop method does the job, but it's not always the cleanest way to insert B-roll, especially when the clip includes unnecessary portions. That extra footage doesn't add anything to the video, so we want to trim it out before dragging the clip onto the timeline. So instead of dropping the entire B-roll clip, I'll undo that action by hitting Command+Z to remove it from the timeline. Now let's do it properly. The better approach is to set what's called an in point and an out point. This allows us to select only the exact portion of the clip we want to use. Here's how that works. Once we've previewed the B-roll and found the starting moment we want, we drag the left edge of the clip's preview bar to that specific point. This becomes our in point, marking the beginning of our selection. Then we scrub forward to where we want the B-roll to end and adjust the right edge to mark the out point. Now we've created a much more precise and intentional selection of that B-roll clip, just the part we actually want to show. Only that highlighted segment gets added. This keeps our timeline clean and our video focused. By using in and out points to pre-trim clips, we save time and make the editing process more efficient. Plus, it helps us maintain tighter pacing and avoid showing any unnecessary content. So, I'll play back the timeline and listen closely. I'll pause the playhead. That's the exact moment where I want to bring in the B-roll. Now I'll take the B-roll clip I previously selected, grab it from the media pool, and carefully align it with the playhead on the timeline so it syncs perfectly with my voiceover. Next, I want this B-roll to end exactly when this particular section of the video finishes. So I'll trim the clip down from the end by dragging it so that it aligns precisely with the end of the current A-roll segment. Now, while I like the overall look of this B-roll clip, there's something about the framing that could be improved. There's too much ceiling visible, which makes the shot feel a little off balance. So I'm going to zoom in slightly and reposition the clip by dragging it around within the frame. This allows me to reframe the subject and draw more focus where it belongs. No pun intended, with that light on the wall in the background. I also think this clip looks slightly too dark, so let's go ahead and do some quick color correction. With the clip selected, I'll move over to the right-hand settings panel. If the adjustment tab isn't visible by default, I'll click the small arrow to expand it and select adjustment. Once that panel opens, I'll scroll down until I see the brightness and shadows options. First, I'll increase the brightness slightly to lift the overall exposure, and then I'll bring up the shadows just a bit to bring out more detail in the darker parts of the frame. Let's compare the before and after. You can toggle the adjustments on and off using the checkbox at the top of the panel. Here's how it looked originally, and now, after the tweaks, it looks much more vibrant and balanced. Now, if you're editing your own video and thinking, well, I don't have any B-roll footage, don't worry. That's where stock video can come in handy. Although I personally believe custom B-roll is always the best option when possible, not everyone has access to a camera or the time to shoot extra footage. Let's keep adding some more B-roll now. I have a clip prepared that shows me actively working in Premiere Pro. It's a widescreen clip, which we'll need to adjust, but it captures exactly what I want to show. I'll set the in point at the beginning of the relevant section, trim the out point where I want it to end, and then drag the selected portion onto the timeline. I also know I want this clip to end exactly where the A-roll segment finishes, so I'll trim the tail end to match that duration. Now here's something to notice. This is a widescreen clip, and since we're editing in a vertical format, it doesn't fill the frame properly. It doesn't look great as is. To fix this, I'll first try zooming in by dragging the corner handles of the clip. Alternatively, with the clip selected, I'll head back to the Video tab, make sure we're under the Basics subtab, and adjust the scale slider to zoom in. Once scaled, I'll reposition the frame slightly to the left so that the computer screen is fully visible in the shot. This simple adjustment helps the clip look much better and more cohesive with the rest of the video. So now when you play through that portion, you get a smooth visual accompaniment that supports what's being said. As you can see, we're going through the video step by step, identifying spots where B-roll can add value, and then layering it in accordingly. Even though the process is a bit repetitive, it's very effective. I'm going to continue doing this throughout the rest of the video, adding B-roll wherever it enhances the viewer's experience. Now that I've placed several B-roll clips throughout the edit, not too many since this is still a level 1 edit, I'm feeling good about the flow of the video so far. So let's move on to the next step, which is applying transitions or visual effects to further improve the polish of the edit. I don't recommend using transitions on every single B-roll clip. That's a common beginner mistake. but a well-placed transition here and there can definitely elevate the production value. Let me show you one of my favorite transitions right now. I want to add a transition when we move from this clip to the next one. In this case, I'm going to use the glare transition. To locate it, I'll go up to the top left corner and click on the Transitions tab. In the search bar, I'll type in glare to quickly filter through the available options. Once it shows up, I can preview how it looks simply by hovering my mouse over the transition thumbnail. Now, to use transitions, the basic rule is that you place them between two clips that are directly next to each other on the same layer. So if I try to drag this glare transition onto the beginning of this clip right now, it won't work. I get a message saying there are no continuous clips, which basically means this clip is sitting alone on its layer with no clip immediately to its left. To fix this, what I need to do is take the underlying A-roll clip, find the point where the next clip starts, and create a split there. I do this by hovering over the timeline and clicking the split tool. Now that I have this new split clip selected, I'm going to drag it up one video layer, putting it right next to the B-roll clip above. But here's something important that can mess with your edit. When I drag this clip up, watch how the other clips on the timeline automatically shift left to fill the gap I just made. That changes the timing of my entire sequence. Not what I want. If I press Command+Z to undo and try again, you'll see it happens every time. To stop this automatic shifting, I need to disable the timeline's magnetic snapping for the main track. I come up to the top and toggle off main track magnet. Now, when I drag that clip up a layer, the empty space stays intact, and the timing of my video remains perfect. With that fixed, I can now take my glare transition, drag it down, and place it exactly between these two clips. Let's see how it looks. That's a very popular transition that a lot of editors use right now. Smooth and subtle. Next, I want to add another transition at the end of this B-roll clip. To do that, I'll take this A-roll clip, create a cut point right where I want the transition, and then drag just that section up a layer. The next transition I want to use is another fan favorite called the pull-in transition. I'll search for it in the Transitions panel. The preview shows a simple, smooth zoom-in effect. I'll drag it between these clips right here and play it back. It's just a very clean and smooth zoom-in transition that feels professional and unobtrusive. From here, I'll go through the rest of my video and add any other transitions that I think will enhance the pacing and visual flow. Now, here's another B-roll sequence for you. CapCut is an extremely powerful free editing software that works on both your phone and your computer. Nothing fancy here, just 4 clips playing one after another. But I want to add a transition going from this clip into the next. If you watch the motion in this clip, I'll mute the audio so you can focus. It's basically pulling out ever so slightly, zooming out a bit. So instead of using the pull-in transition, which zooms in, I'll do the opposite and use the pull-out transition. I've already searched for it here, so I'll drag it on. You can see how this naturally matches the clip's motion with that subtle zoom-out effect, making the cut feel smooth and intentional. To finish off this little B-roll sequence, I'll use the glare transition again. So now I'll come up to glare, drag it between these two clips, and play it through. You can see from the timeline that our video is starting to look a bit more advanced with these additions, adding auto captions. The last step before exporting is to add auto captions to the video. CapCut has a really intuitive auto caption feature. To use it, I'll come up to the top left panel, select text, and the first option you'll see is auto captions. I'll choose the language, which is English, leave all other settings as default, and then hit Create. CapCut will automatically switch the right panel to the Text Editing tab. If it doesn't, you can manually click text at the top and then select the basic sub-tab. Here you can adjust the font size, change the font itself, and make other text edits. Applying changes to all captions. One important note: if you want your changes to apply to all captions throughout the video, make sure the box Apply to All is checked. If you want to edit just one specific caption, simply uncheck the Apply to All box, and your changes will only affect the selected caption. Making style adjustments. I'll undo that last action, Command+Z, and recheck Apply to All to make captions more dynamic. Select a caption layer. Go to the Animation sub-tab in the top right within the text menu. There are many animations. Some require Pro, but several free ones are great. My favorites are Zoom In, Glitch, and Bounce Left. For example, with Zoom In, you'll see the text smoothly zoom as it appears. You can adjust the animation's duration. Adding music. Finally, let's add some music to complete the edit. You can use trending audio from TikTok or Instagram, or choose built-in tracks from CapCut's Audio tab. Just drag the track underneath your main footage in the timeline. Go to the media pool, click Import, and find your audio file. Drag it down to the audio layer. Usually, I start short videos at the beat drop of the song to make the music feel more impactful. Looking at the waveform, I can tell where that peak is, so I'll move the song's start to match it. Now, if you want to lower the volume of your music, CapCut gives you a couple of easy options. The first way is to select your music track, then head over to the Basic tab right here. Usually, I like to bring the audio down to around -16 decibels. That's a good level so it doesn't overpower your voice or other important sounds in your video. Another way is to adjust the volume directly on the timeline. You'll notice there's a thin line running through the audio waveform. If you hover your mouse over that line, it'll change so you can drag it up or down to increase or decrease the volume. This is really handy if you want to create volume fades or fine-tune specific sections. CapCut is an incredibly powerful free editing software that works seamlessly on both your phone and computer, making it super accessible no matter where you are. One of my favorite built-in features is the auto captions. They're smart and intuitive, saving you a ton of time. Plus, there are plenty of built-in templates and effects that make your video look polished and professional with just a few clicks. Once you've added your music and adjusted everything to your liking, the final step before exporting is to trim your video's end. Make sure to cut off any extra blank footage at the tail end of your timeline. If you leave that extra space, your exported video will have a long, silent or black section after your content finishes, which isn't ideal. And that pretty much wraps up our intro beginner style edit. If this is your first time editing a video, I think this is a fantastic starting point. You'll have a fully edited, captioned, and musically enhanced video ready to share with the world. Exporting your video in CapCut is super straightforward. Just come up to the top right corner and hit the export button. Once the export dialog box pops up, you can name your video and select where you want it saved. You can copy the video settings I use here, which I found produce the best quality exports. Finally, just hit export and CapCut will process your video. And voila, you've got a professional-looking video ready to upload or share anywhere. Now, if you're ready to take things further, it's time to dive into the advanced edit. CapCut has a ton of powerful features built right in, and we're going to explore many of them in detail. Don't worry if some of this feels a little overwhelming. Learning new software always takes practice, and it's totally normal to rewind or pause the video as you go through it. Let's get into the advanced editing techniques in CapCut and unlock its full potential. Okay, so diving into the advanced edit, the first place we're going to spend a lot of time on is the intro. When you're creating content online, especially if you want to grow your views and audience, the intro is everything. It's your chance to hook the viewer and keep them watching. That's why I really try to edit the intro meticulously, cutting, animating, and layering elements until it feels dynamic and engaging. Now, for this section, I'll still use some of the auto captions and instead manually create some custom text animations to really give the intro a polished look. So let's say our script is, what's the best free editing software for beginners? Here's how we'll do it. First, come up to the Text tab. Click Add Text, and you'll get some default text to work with. I'll bring this text box down to where I want it on the screen. Now, just like before, I'll increase the size, move it into position, and change the font to something clean. I'm using Resolve for this example. Since our sentence has multiple parts, I'm going to create 3 separate text layers, one for what's, one for the, and one for best. A quick tip, if you want to duplicate any text layer, or really any layer in CapCut, just hold Option on Mac or Alt on PC, select the layer, and drag it upward or downward. This creates an exact copy, which is super handy and saves time. So now I've duplicated the layers and renamed them to match the different words. If you want to move multiple layers at the same time, just drag your mouse to select all of them and then reposition or resize them together. I'm going to make these text layers a little tighter and a bit smaller so they fit neatly on the screen. Next, we want to animate all 3 text layers simultaneously. With them all selected, head over to the Animation tab. For this, I'm going to use the Bounce Left animation, which makes the text slide in with a bit of bounce. It's smooth and eye-catching. Now, when we play it back, the text will animate in rhythm with the voiceover. What's the best free? And the animation complements the pacing perfectly. Now, before I show you the next part, I want to explain something because this next edit is a bit more complex but very impactful. So we can focus on the new zoom effect. To create the zoom in effect on this clip, we're going to use a powerful but straightforward tool called keyframes. Keyframes let you animate properties like position, scale, and opacity over time by setting specific points and letting the software create smooth transitions between them. This is a game changer for editing because it gives you much more control over how your clips move and change. Ready to see how keyframes work and create that zoom? Let's dive in. An easy way to think of a keyframe is like anchoring a certain setting at a specific point in time. So with this first clip selected, come up to the Video tab, then go to Basic Settings. If we want the clip to zoom in over time, we'll keyframe the scale parameter. To add a keyframe, just hit this little diamond icon. This basically locks that scale value at the current point in time. You can actually see a small keyframe icon appear on the clip timeline at the far left side, showing exactly where that keyframe was placed. Now, if we move forward in the video timeline and change the scale again, the software will automatically create a new keyframe for us. So I'll zoom in here a bit, and right when I release the mouse, you'll notice a new keyframe gets added. Now, if I scrub back and forth between these 2 keyframes, you can see the clip smoothly zooming in from the first scale value to the second. After that second keyframe, the zoom will stop and hold steady. I'm actually going to zoom out a bit, so we have some extra space around the playhead. I don't want to just keyframe the zoom though, because if I zoom in without adjusting position, my head starts to get cut off in the frame. So I'll also keyframe the position to keep my head centered. Here's how. Go back to the beginning of the clip. Under the position setting, click the diamond icon to add your first position keyframe. Then move forward to where the zoom stops. Now, grab the video frame in the preview window and drag it down slightly. This creates a new position keyframe. You can see it changes the Y position, that's up and down movement, keeping my head in the same spot on screen even as the zoom changes. Now here's where it gets really cool and more advanced. We're going to use CapCut's auto cutout feature, creating a dynamic layered effect. To do this, select the clip, then hold Option on Mac or Alt on PC, and drag the clip up 1 layer in the timeline. Now you'll have 2 layers of the exact same clip stacked on top of each other. The top layer is the one we'll apply the cutout effect to. With the top clip selected, head to Video, then to the Cutout sub-tab, and scroll down to click Auto Cutout. It'll take a few seconds to process, then you're done. It might look like nothing happened at first because the bottom clip is still visible underneath. If you turn off, hide the bottom layer, now drag the background clip to the start of the timeline so it lines up with your video. It's a bit tight on screen here, but you'll see the new background appears behind me because it's underneath the cutout layer. I can then grab this background clip in the preview window, rotate it about 9 degrees, and increase the scale. One last important thing. First, when you're editing your footage, the key is to find the exact moment where you want the transition or effect to start. This keeps your timeline clean and focused. Now we're going to animate the clip's opacity. Opacity basically controls how transparent or visible your clip is. To do this, select your clip and make sure you're in the Basic sub-tab under Video. Scroll down until you find the opacity control. Here's the process. Place a keyframe at the point where you want the clip to be fully visible. This is usually where the transition is complete. Then, move back to the beginning of the clip and lower the opacity all the way down to 0. This automatically creates a second keyframe at the start, making the clip fade in from invisible to fully visible. Next, let's make the text fade out, which is a common effect for clean transitions. Instead of fading out each text clip one by one, a great trick is to combine all your text clips into one group, called a compound clip in CapCut. With your compound clip selected, go back down to opacity, add a keyframe where you want the fade out to start, then move a few frames forward using the arrow keys on your keyboard and reduce the opacity to 0. This will create a smooth fade-out effect for all your text at once. If the timing isn't quite right, you can easily reposition the keyframes so the text fades out earlier or later, based on your needs. Now let's move on to animating your main subject, or frame, so it slides off the screen. Select the frame or clip, go to the Video tab, then the Basic subtab, and find the position controls. Add a keyframe right where you want the slide animation to begin, locking the current position in place. Move a few frames forward in the timeline, then drag the clip to the left, off the screen. CapCut will automatically create a new keyframe for this new position. When you play back your timeline, you'll see the frame smoothly slide off to the left. At the same time your frame slides off, you'll want to bring your next text, say free editing software, onto the screen. Head over to the Text tab, drag your default text onto the timeline, and scale it up to the right size. To speed up the workflow, you can duplicate the text by holding Option, Mac, or Alt, Windows, and dragging. To style the text, select all your text layers, go to the Text Greater Than Basic tab, and change the font. Something clean like Resolve works well. Scroll down to remove the stroke and change the color to black for a bold, clear look. Timing is crucial here, so adjust the text layers on the timeline to match your voiceover or script precisely. To add more polish, select all the text layers, go to the Animation tab, and apply a subtle animation effect like a glitch. This adds some visual interest and makes the text pop. If the animation feels too long, just shorten the duration. Now, if you recall from an earlier edit, we had some B-roll footage underneath. However, that B-roll might be hidden if the background clip, like a crumpled paper texture, is too long. To fix this, select that background clip, hit Command+B or Ctrl+B to split it at the right point, and delete the leftover section. Do the same for any text clips that overextend the scene. Split and delete anything that doesn't fit your timing. Once your timing is clean, play through your edit and see how smoothly everything flows. Text fading, backgrounds transitioning, and frames sliding off. Earlier, there was a glare transition applied, but with so many layers active, the glare effect didn't really work because transitions usually operate between two layers, and the complexity here was too much, so we removed it for clarity. Finally, to keep your timeline tidy and manageable, you can create one compound clip for the entire intro sequence, compound clips inside compound clips. If you run into this issue, just drag any existing compound clip down the timeline, so it's separate. Then select all the other layers, right-click, and create a new compound clip. This makes it easier to apply further transitions or effects between this intro clip and the next clip on your timeline, keeping your project clean and flexible. If you ever want to make changes, you can right-click the compound clip and choose Undo Compound Clip to break it back into the original layers. And that's a powerful workflow for creating smooth fades, sliding animations, and managing complex layered edits all within free video editing software like CapCut. So if I head up to the Transition tab, you'll see we've already got the glare transition selected. I'll just drag that down onto the timeline, and now let's play through and see how it looks. Pretty cool, right? I know it took a bit of work to get here, but the intro is usually the most complex part of any video. So once you get that done, the rest becomes much easier. We've covered a lot so far. To save time during the rest of this edit, whenever I repeat a process I've already explained in detail, I won't go over it step by step again. Instead, I'll just do it, and you can watch the workflow. For example, here we added 2 more text layers and applied a glitch animation effect to them, just like we did earlier. Moving on, one of my favorite subtle effects in pretty much all my edits is keyframing slight zoom-ins on clips. It adds a bit of emphasis and really ups the energy. For this clip here, instead of having it stay static, I'm going to start at the beginning, make sure it's selected, then keyframe the scale and position. Next, I'll move the playhead near the end of the clip, zoom in a little, and adjust the position slightly downward. Then I'll drag the final keyframe right to the end of the clip. Now, when we play it back, you'll notice that subtle zoom effect. It really helps draw the viewer's attention. To add some animation, I'll select this clip and apply the slide-up animation, one of my favorites for bringing graphics smoothly onto the screen. So now it slides in from the bottom, while I say Premiere Pro. I really love this software, but I will say it's not the most beginner-friendly, and the monthly subscription can be a downside. Moving forward, this next segment introduces a motion background effect to complement the narration about paying for editing programs. I often use animated motion backgrounds like this one with floating dots. You can find these free online. I'll bring it down onto the timeline, rotate it slightly, and scale it up to fill the frame. To keep everything neat, I'm going to layer each text element separately and extend their durations as needed. I'll offset the timing so they come up one after the other, reinforcing the message visually. After finishing this section, I'll trim the excess footage by selecting all relevant clips, hitting Command B to split, and deleting the leftovers. Don't forget to remove the old background layer too. Now, as the script says, it's 2024 and the days of paying hundreds for editing software are over. We transition to showcasing CapCut's built-in templates and transitions. Since we've already shown off a lot of transitions earlier, I want to focus here on the templates. I'll go to the Text tab and look for a Subscribe template to add a little flair. I like this one. It looks clean and professional. So I'll size it up and position it. I also found a few other text templates I like, so I'll bring those in and slightly stagger their appearance to keep the pacing lively. One of these I want to place in the top corner. To do that, I'll duplicate the B-roll layer, then use the auto cutout feature on the duplicate to isolate the background. This lets me place the graphic between the original and cutout layers so it appears naturally. It looks super slick. The script goes on to mention professional editing features like auto cutouts and green screen effects, and I've already prepared that part, but I'll explain it as we go. You've probably noticed by now that we've been working with the auto cutout feature throughout this edit. Here's a quick overview. We have our main A-roll footage, and then layered on top is the animated black kinetic dots background. The text for the auto cutouts sits just underneath the actual cutout layer, which is why you can see the text appearing behind the cutout itself. We applied the familiar glitch animations to those text layers, which keeps everything consistent and visually engaging. Once the text cuts out, it wraps up with the phrase, "so much more," and from there, the video closes just like the previous one. Now, even though the visual editing part is complete, there's still one absolutely essential step left: adding sound design. Sound design is often something beginners overlook, but it's a total game changer that can take your video from good to professional level quality. Whenever I'm editing, I look for any major movements, transitions, or graphic animations where a sound effect can really elevate the impact. For example, quick movements or slides often call for whoosh sounds, while popping graphics pair perfectly with pop or snap effects. And if you mention money or cash, a classic cash register sound effect really drives the point home. The possibilities with sound design are endless, but the key is to be intentional and subtle, enhancing the viewer's experience without overpowering the visuals. So, let's do a quick pass right now and add some sound effects. Like any other media, you simply import the sound effects directly into your editing software. Just be sure to spend some time searching for the right sounds. We'll import the entire folder into CapCut and start placing sounds where they make sense. For instance, at the very beginning when my cutout pops into the frame, a subtle whoosh effect really adds to that moment. Zooming into the timeline lets me precisely place the sound so it syncs perfectly with the action. For sounds I use repeatedly, like the whooshes on various transitions, I simply copy and paste the sound effect throughout the timeline to save time. When the text zooms in, pops appear on screen. That's where I add pop sounds, just timed carefully. It's all about layering these little audio details to create a polished, immersive experience. Once you've gone through and placed your sounds, adjusted volumes, and fine-tuned timing, your edit is truly complete. The final step is hitting that export button and saving your video in the format you need, just like we did in previous projects. I realize that was a lot of information packed into this video, from beginner-friendly basics to some of the more advanced editing techniques available in CapCut. Hopefully, there was something valuable for every skill level watching today, whether you're just getting started or you're already diving into advanced effects. If you enjoyed this tutorial and want to take your editing skills even further, I highly recommend checking out the 14-day Filmmaker Bundle over at contentcreatortemplates.com. It's an incredible program packed with tips, templates, and training that I think you'll find really inspiring. Thanks so much for watching. If you found this video helpful, Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss any future content. I'm excited to see you in the next video, where we'll continue to explore more creative editing tips and tricks. Until then, happy editing.